Any other guests who would like to ask a question is most welcome.
I would like to ask you two questions. My first question is, there seems to be constant struggle for freedom in Kashmir. What do you believe is the solution?
The question is about the freedom struggle in Kashmir. Now, I understand that here there would be many Indian guests as well, and if we turn this forum into a political forum, particularly in the areas of such as Kashmir, where the struggle is going on, then many other areas of the world would also require attention. And the purpose of this meeting, this session, will be in fact undermined, because we are holding such sessions to unite the world, to bring them together. So if we indulge in such questions which are controversial, there are two sides to it, then there is a danger of bad blood flowing between guests and guests. So I should like to avoid the answer confronting the issue as such. But in principle, I can only say that peace is entirely dependent on justice. Wherever there is a threat to peace or peace has been broken, there always is an unjust attitude as culprit behind that disturbance or disorder. So all the world politicians should pay attention to the question, the fundamental question of absolute justice. If somehow they agree as a whole that all human affairs must be settled on the principle of justice, then all the issues relating to peace and disturbances will be resolved automatically. So without attending to the basic cause of disorder, any answer will be meaningless. It may satisfy some, some may not agree with it, but no purpose will be solved no purpose will be served if I give a superficial answer. As I have already told you, everywhere the basic issue is that of injustice. So wherever we find injustice, we must have a common cause against it. Thank you.
It has been said that ghosts and spirits exist around people, and people have been said to have seen them and felt them. Is this true?
Have you ever seen yourself? Any ghost, any spirit are hovering around you?
No, not really.
Huh? I haven't seen either.
But it has been said.
So those who claim, let's ask them. Right?
Okay.
Ghosts and spirits, you said, right? But of course, one sometimes experiences something like phantoms. What they truly mean, we do not understand. And if they carry a message, then that they might represent a sort of vision from God. If they are without message, they just scare you, then they could be understood as a psychic phenomenon. Some inward disturbance is taking shape of these illusions. Right? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Huzur, there are some questions which a lady who's present here has passed on, and a lady who's present here, she has written these questions, but she doesn't want to appear herself. Right. There are a lot of questions she has. It starts with, what are the differences between an Ahmadi and a Sunni apart from believing in the Mahdi?
Ahmadi and a Sunni Muslim.
Ji.
Not Ahmadi and Shia Muslims. right?
No, she has asked about Sunni.
Okay. You see, the major differences, I should say, are quite a few. And it will take a long time to answer this question fully. And maybe it deprives others of their chances of asking questions. I will try to be brief without giving arguments on either side. Right? First of all, it's difficult to answer on behalf of all the Sunnis because they are subdivided into 34 sects. So how can I undertake the exercise of representing the different beliefs of 34 sects and then compare them to ours? So let us stick only to those of the Sunni beliefs which I find common among them and compare them with Ahmadiyya beliefs. First of all, we believe as a whole, as Ahmadiyya community, that Islam does not present a God who has ceased to speak to human beings or who will ever cease to speak to human beings at any cross-section of human history. So if he spoke in the past, he would continue to speak in the future and present inclusive, if and when he so desires. So unfortunately, the present day Sunni Muslims have adopted an attitude towards wahi, ilham, etc., which is very negative in nature. This has not been the view of the Sunnis throughout the history of 1400 years of the past up to Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Many scholars as well as divine holy people among them have claimed to be recipient of Allah's revelations in some form. But unfortunately, I'm talking of the contemporary Sunnis. They seem to have lost hope in revelation. And this is what is emphasized in Ahmadiyyat. We believe that the essence of all religion is to lead to God, just not in theory, but practically to make man capable of being in communion with God, or capable of achieving such good conduct that God, if he chooses, may communicate with him. That is a better expression. So that's one big difference. And as such, the emphasis on prayer also is very much reduced and weakened among the other Sunnis. The prayer seems to be just a formal expression of raising hands and dropping them, while in Ahmadiyyat, the institution of prayer is taken very seriously. And all the Ahmadis over the world experience the benefit of prayer in the form of its acceptance, and also again in the form of messages from God, through dreams sometimes, through visions, also through revelations. So that is another thing which distinguishes Ahmadiyyat prominently as against the other Sunni sects. Again, they believe in the Jesus Christ not to have been crucified at all. This is their belief. They believe that the thing which was crucified, they believe, of course, that something happened, some person or somebody looking like Christ was crucified. So what they say is that that thing which was crucified was in fact a Jew. And he was completely transformed at the bidding of God by two angels who descended, got hold of a Jew who was, previous to that, was a sworn enemy of Jesus Christ. So he transformed his figure so perfectly that it was impossible even for the disciples of Jesus Christ to recognize him to be any person other than Jesus. And what they did, according to their story or belief, that these angels descended from heaven, opened up a big enough hole to carry this fake Jesus into the room where Jesus, they say, was kept before the day when he was to be executed, and took Jesus in their lap and decamped with him to the fourth heaven, leaving behind a person who looked like Jesus, spoke like Jesus, and even he was so dazed by the influence of these angels that he claimed to be the Jesus himself. So that something was crucified while Jesus was saved. And we believe that this is all not only a fiction, a myth, but the most nonsensical fiction and myth that we have ever come across. God doesn't behave like this. If God wanted to save Jesus, he had other means. He has been saving other prophets before him. And for him to go into this drama, which would in fact work against the claim of Jesus, is the most stupid thing one can hear. How it goes against the interest of Jesus in Christianity is simply the fact that why God wanted to, according to them, their own admission, save Jesus was to save him from the accursed death, which according to the Old Testament, if someone claimed to be from God and he was not God, he was a false man, he would hang by the tree. And he would die by the tree, by that hanging, and that would be a cursed death, proving that he is false. To avoid this drama was staged by God, according to the other Sunni ulama. Now let's re-examine the case once again, re-examine the case, and you'll be surprised to see that it works exactly to the contrary purpose. It doesn't help Jesus Christ at all, because the Jews who were watching him, who were putting to test his truth by attempting to have him crucified, what they saw, according to this story, they saw somebody exactly like Jesus, who continued to claim to be Jesus. He believed in his identity as Jesus so strongly that he faced death rather than to change his claim, rather to reform himself and say, all right, I withdraw my claim and I'm no longer the person I claim to be. Nothing of this happened. So what was the impression received by the onlookers, by the Jews who were watching with interest the outcome of this exercise? How could God blame them for rejecting him then? Were they not right? And within their religious right to disbelieve and reject him, because according to the Bible, if somebody claimed to be a prophet of God while he was not a prophet of God, and he hanged to his death upon the cross, then that person was a false man, he was a liar, and he had to be rejected. So what was the crime of those Jews who saw a figure like Jesus, claiming to be Jesus, until, as they say, his death, and accepted the verdict of Bible, of the Old Testament, and said he must have been a false person? Now, the ulama, the Muslim Sunni ulama say, when they appear before God on the Day of Judgment, God would tell them that you were duped, you were false, you were deceived. That was Jesus. That was not Jesus. It was a Jew. Now, what sort of God that would be, who would blame them for being duped by him himself, the Almighty? to such perfection that they had not the slightest chance of recognizing the man as not being Jesus. So this is not only illogical, this is an insult to the wisdom of God. And then what happened later on, according to them? The person who seemed to have died upon cross was approached by his disciples, his own mother. Not his mother, but Jesus' mother. While the corpse, they say, whom they were kissing and touching and seeking blessing from and shedding their tears over, was not the corpse of Jesus, but the corpse of a Jew. Well, I have full respect for Jews, but these ulama don't have any. So according to their scenario, this person was the sworn enemy of Jesus, whom his mother Mary was sending off like this with tears and with prayers and with such sorrow in her heart. So who was duped? The disciples of Jesus Christ. In reality, what happened was that such a drama could not have been conceived by anyone but the Satan and the devil himself, because it worked exactly against the interests of Jesus Christ and his followers. There's more to it. I have discussed it in detail in one of my small books on Jesus Christ and what happened to him. So I think this is sufficient for the time being. I'm sorry, I had promised perhaps that I will not go into the arguments, did I? But I was carried away. So this is their belief, and Ahmadis believe no such nonsense. What we believe is that God promised to save him from the ignoble death upon cross, as God had shown him in so many ways that he will be saved prior to crucifixion. He was told by God that he will leave the people here, the Israelite tribes to whom he addressed as a prophet, and go in search of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This promise he had made to his people. So if he had died upon cross, he would be proved false, doubly false. First, because of the prophecy in the Bible that the true prophets will not meet their death hanging upon cross. And secondly, he had made a promise to his people, and that promise proved to be false. And secondly, he made another promise that no miracle will be shown unto the people of that time except the miracle of Jonah, the prophet of the fish. Now, what was that miracle? Did he die within the belly of the fish and was revived from that death? Or did he continue to survive within the period of 3 days and nights, as it is said, and came out live and whole as he was before being swallowed by the fish? So if Jesus is true, then this is what we should expect. That he goes through very dangerous and almost fatal crisis of his life, and God, according to his promise, saved him from death like he had saved earlier a prophet, Jonah, as known as the Jonah of the fish. So on both these counts, we believe that he could not have died upon cross, but he could have gone through a stage or a state looking like death, like deep coma. And he must have been revived from that, because this is exactly what happened to Prophet Jonah. When he was vomited ultimately, it is mentioned in the Holy Quran very clearly, and I understand also in the Bible, that he was almost on the verge of death. And God so managed that he was vomited out in a place where there were some healing herbs who provided shadow and also some juices for him to chew the herb and get cured. So something like that should have happened to Jesus Christ if he was true, and we believe he was true. So that is why we read in the New Testament that some ointment was applied to his wounds. After his body was taken down and was kept in the sepulchre during that period, an ointment which in fact had been prepared earlier by his disciples. So the dead bodies do not need any ointments. This also is a sure sign that he survived the ordeal and was delivered alive from the cross, not dead. So this is the second very important area of our difference. And the third is about the Mahdi. They believe that a Mahdi would appear at the end of the time, who would be a bloody Mahdi. Bloody Mahdi in the sense not as an invective or abuse, but bloodthirsty Mahdi. Would take up his sword and kill right and left and destroy all the enemies of Islam and conquer the whole world as if single-handed, who then will be joined by Jesus Christ from the heaven, who would descend, and they both would put up a joint front against all the enemies of Islam, and they would work like the demons of fairy tales, because their breath would be so poisonous that as they breathe, they would breathe death to the enemy. And that breath will be carried far and wide like a poisonous gas. Now, these things are mentioned, not exactly as I'm telling you, this is their belief, but as parables or as a figure of speech by Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hazrat Masih Maud, the founder of the Ahmadiyya community, has interpreted them very rationally and logically, and it has presented a very different realistic picture of what was to happen at the time when these events would take place. So we follow that interpretation of Hazrat Masih Maud and reject such views as a Mahdi, demon-like thing would appear, or Jesus, whom we prove from the Bible as well as from the Holy Quran that he was not carried away anywhere, but lived a normal life after he was saved from death upon crucifixion. He and Mahdi, we believe, are not two different persons, but they are simply two titles of the same reformer. So if Jesus never ascended to heaven, so he would never descend from heaven. That is to say, live and bodily. Otherwise, of course, he ascended to heaven in spirit, like all prophets of Allah did. So that is our belief as against theirs. And again, the life after death, the decree of God, they are differently understood by us. They believe that the life after death would be a carnal reincarnation, not here on earth, but in the afterworld. So people will be reincarnated into their own bodies. That is, the revival would take place not of the spiritual form, but actually as the people here die on earth, so they will be raised. And that is why you might have read in newspapers controversies regarding the donation of eyes or parts of the body. The ulama of this school strongly condemn this as un-Islamic and irreligious, and they warn the people that if you donate your eyes after death, you'll be raised blind, because your eyes would have been transferred to some other person, and you will rise with whole healthy eyes, and you will rise only with your sockets. So this is their view of the hereafter. We believe that the body will not be revived. If you believe in the revival of the body, then there are other very serious problems attending this concept. For instance, many people die of an old age, highly advanced old age, with rheumatism and all that, and some dies in their bed, they can't move, some on the wheelchairs. So will they rise like this? What sort of survival that would be? They would much rather die again than to be revived with all the rheumatic problems and this and that, and advanced age. You see, that their younger bodies would have died much earlier. So the question is, if they are to be raised as they die, then they must be raised in the form in which they die. So we believe that this is all a very naive understanding of the hereafter. We believe that the soul or the spirit, when it leaves the body, it leaves as an independent entity. And we believe that in the evolution of life to that end and for that purpose, that animal spirits or consciousness has not acquired that quality of independent entity which is required for survival after death. So they die, and they die along with their ego and their awareness of their self. Nothing is left. But man has reached a stage of such highly evolved consciousness that it can survive by itself without being constantly imprisoned in carnal body. Now this belief in the survival of the soul previously was rejected by the scientists on the theory that soul by itself is at best is a package of energy. And a package of energy cannot survive by itself in a form. So it's not possible. Now, well, whatever is possible or not belonging to other dimensions, first of all, it is not for us to decide. Because if the dimension of the soul is different, then we are not in a position to give a verdict about its possibility of existence or otherwise. In our soul, as we experience now, while we live, we can't comprehend it. The orders come from where? Where is the decisive power? And what commands the body? The nerves are only carriers. The brain is only an apparatus. What is mind? This has been investigated by highly qualified scientists, and they are divided among themselves. Some very strongly believe that it is not the brain which is mind. It is something ethereal we cannot touch, we cannot reach, we cannot comprehend. But that ultimate decision-making authority is something which is everywhere and yet cannot be defined to be here or there. So apart from that, the physicists have now discovered the existence of soliton, which is a bundle of energy which can survive without the need of being embodied in matter. And work has already been advanced on this subject. When this discovery was made in America, the first reaction of the physicists was, well, this is exactly what the religious people used to say. After all, soul can exist. So I'm not telling you this as a layman. I'm telling you on the authority of those who know the subject and who have ultimately reached the conclusion that something like soul as claimed by the religious people is scientifically possible. So this is our view of the hereafter, that we live a life in the form of soul or spirit. And what would be the dimension of that spirit, how it would have a dimension in the forms of length and breadth, etc., that is not possible for us to judge. It's not within our means. But something like that can happen and should happen if we are to live again. Now, the authority for this, religious authority, again I'm entering the arguments. So let's stop here, please. These are some of the major differences about our concept. And then hell and heaven. Hell is also corporal according to them, carnal hell and carnal heaven and so on. And we interpret them as spiritual forms of existence after death.
So, Jazakallah.
Any other question? Or you are going to put the second question as well?
Should I?
Okay, well, no, it's up to you. If there is a lady here who wants to say a thing, I think you better give her preference. Huh?
Good evening. You talk about the physical body, body, but what about the real I, the higher self? Do you work, or, we're only a shell, the physical body is a shell. What about the true essence of our being, the higher self? Do you work with your higher self? You talk about receiving...
I'll come to that. I'm not talking of mystical terms.
No.
I'm talking of hard realities. All among us, all living beings, have a center of consciousness. Some are more developed, some are less developed. That is the separating line between death and life. The moment life was created, even in the form of the most rudimentary amoebas and things, they had a consciousness. They somehow knew what was good for them, what was bad for them. They reacted against certain things, they were drawn into other things. And they knew somehow they must survive, and they knew what would make them survive. The consciousness is very, very dull, agreed. But life is consciousness. What I'm saying is that this consciousness went through the long evolutionary period so that every higher form of life became more conscious and more aware, until the stage of man or Homo sapiens was reached. And this consciousness, which is found in all forms of life, then expanded beyond all proportions to the previous experiences. Animals can be conscious of themselves, their surroundings, what they see, but they cannot rationalize things. They cannot see beyond. They cannot conceive what universe is. They cannot even dream of thinking of life after death and so on. So all these areas of highly refined consciousness are created by God for the purpose of man. If man had not reached that stage of high refinement and vastness of his consciousness, he could not be conscious of God, and the purpose of the whole universe would come to naught.
So how do you believe we can expand our consciousness here on earth?
Yes, we continue with our realizations. Now, I was comparing previously Homo sapiens with other earlier, less developed forms of life. But this comparison also applies between human beings and human beings. There are those who reject God, and their consciousness remains limited to all that is here, and their life has only the purpose to satiate themselves with whatever they live with and live for in this world. So because they do not have that expansion in their consciousness, which includes the existence of God, so they are deprived of those special values which have to be inculcated in the soul, so that after death it feels the nearness of God and familiarity and a sense of reward of getting closer to the beloved one. So they are sort of inward-looking things, like animals in that respect, which don't visualize things beyond them. But there are other areas of differences in consciousness between a highly educated person and a less educated person, an ignorant brute and a highly sensitive person and a highly refined person. So we live with an aura of our consciousness around us. So we are bigger by that aura or smaller in accordance with the diminution of that aura. So every man cannot be judged by the same yardstick in this area.
So do you believe every day that our consciousness expands through life's experience?
Right.
So how can you expand your consciousness to a greater degree within you so that maybe you can help other people? I mean, for yourself, what...
Yes, this is the answer to this is already provided in the Surah Fatiha, the first surah which we read in every namaz, in the first chapter of the Holy Quran, and elsewhere also in the Holy Quran. The Holy Quran educates us in the area of further refinements and further expansion. And it tells us that it can only happen if you genuinely and rightly know the names or attributes of God. And if you realize what God is, you can only realize it with the help of understanding His attributes. So when you understand His attributes and you know that you have sprung from Him, you have come from Him, to return to Him in the best form would require you to imitate Him in all His attributes that you understand. So in this way, for instance, the Holy Quran, in the surah which I was speaking of, tells us of God being Rabbul Alameen. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise be to Allah, who is the provident of the entire universe. So if you expand the area of your providence beyond your family and close circle of friends, and not only be kind to other human beings, but also to the animals and the very existence itself, then you are truly imitating God. And by imitating God in just one attribute, imagine how much it expands you and expands your consciousness. So this is the way, this is not just a philosophy.
No.
It's a solid education, a scientific education as to how you should expand your consciousness and refine yourself.
Some religions or ways of life provide things like mantras, things where we can focus our mind so that we can actually rise above our lower self. Because a lot of us know what's right and wrong, but it's more difficult to put those into practice. So by perhaps repeating things...
See, it is there that religion of Islam, and all religions, I believe, differ from philosophies and mysticism. In philosophies and mysticism, you try to delve deeper into your own self and find out the truth within you. But there the problem is that it varies from person to person as to what truth they may discover. And people belong to different stages already, like some are coarse people, some are hard-hearted, some are soft, There's so many variations of degrees that you can't even count them. So if everybody can reach the truth with this instrument of delving deeper into oneself, they are not equipped properly and equally to do that. So the margin of error is so big that it's impossible to agree to with the experience of one in the light of a different appearance of another person. So that is why the Holy Quran speaks of God Himself, the only authority to enlighten man as to what he is. Otherwise, it will be just conjectures.
But even with God and the truth of God, people can only accept to the degree of their state of involvement, if you want to call it that. And so maybe what my truth is today, the truth I can accept today, is different from your truth because of your...
But we're talking only of degrees here, not as
but isn't that
something which cannot be compromised with the other part of our understanding. I'll explain. I understand the problem you have presented. You see, I come back to the illustration of God being the Rabb. Now, I agree that every man cannot be of the same quality and capacity to act as the provident for others. And he may understand this word slightly differently, of course, or even with a big difference. He says, I am Rabb to my family and that's enough. Some say, no, he's Rabbul Alameen, so I must go beyond the family circles. But there will be no contradiction in them. Some will gain to a smaller degree, some will gain to a larger degree. So there is no danger of such errors as will deprive you of the purpose of this exercise. So that is why it is highly essential to know God from Him. And another reason why we are compelled to do so, we can't have another option, is that God is beyond human beings, beyond all understanding, including angels and all forms of life, because there is nothing like Him. So unless He reveals Himself, and only to the degree that He reveals Himself, we can have a measure of access to understanding Him.
But if we're all part of God, surely by looking within, we can reach those truths.
Part of God? God has no parts.
Okay, God is...
I mean, you visualize Him like a motor car with parts?
No, to me...
An aeroplane more complicated? Yeah?
No. I mean, okay, as I understand it, God, everybody... a lot of people talk about God in an image they can understand.
You have physical parts,
sure,
as I have.
Yeah.
But you don't have spiritual parts.
I don't.
Nobody.
Why?
I don't have either.
Why?
You don't have spiritual parts because spirit is indivisible.
It's indivisible.
It can have characteristics, but no parts.
Yeah. But
you can't say this is the limb of the spirit, this is the arm, this is the elbow, and this is the neck of the spirit.
But spirit is energy, isn't it?
Physical beings have parts, and the spiritual beings have aspects or characteristics. That's all.
But what about the soul within us, the spirit within us?
The soul, as the Bible also says, and the Holy Quran also expresses the same truth in different words, but to the same substance, that God has made man after Him. That means the characteristics of God, which man could understand, has already been provided in him to some degree. So if God is kind, so the potential of being kind has already been planted in man. If God can be vengeful to those who hurt the innocent people, for the sake of innocent people, sometimes a part of them should be punished as well. So when vengeance creates goodness,
yeah,
only then God is vengeful, not otherwise. So that also is bred in man or human beings. So that is why I said spirit has no parts, but it has characters and attributes.
But surely the true essence of our being is spiritual.
Pardon?
Sorry,
Please,
I'm taking
please.
up. Isn't the true essence of our being spiritual? I mean, this physical
right.
body is only a shell which we need for the earth plane here.
Well, not shell in the sense that is filled with milk, something like that. The whole body has constituents which run into billions. And each constituent of body in the form of cells of different types and natures are given different messages by God, and they have to act according to those messages, which nowadays the scientists call the DNA and RNA, character-bearing chromosomes and things. We believe that each body as a whole is not a shell but an apparatus from which soul is extracted and then governs it, and that soul has no parts. It's equally available to all, equally belonging to every part of the body, and yet you can't define this is soul and that is soul. It's invisible.
Yeah.
When it leaves the body, there is no decrease in the body weight at all. When a child is given life, it begins to breathe, there is no addition to its body weight. So it cannot be a mass. It has to belong to some dimensions which are incomprehensible to us, but its existence is beyond doubt. Because if we are what we think we are, the moment we think of ourselves, we prove the existence of soul.
Thank you. I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you.
Well, it's no fault of yours. The subject is very vast. Of course, I agree. Yes. Any other question, please? If there is no question, then you can come and take over the mic, please. On behalf of somebody.
Jesus. The next question that the lady has put on this long list is about peace in the world, and she says that how do you justify the role of the Mahdi? How do you clarify his position as a prophet? And what was his role in relation to unity among the Muslims, as there seems to be a marked decline? Was his mission a success? How do you justify this success in relation to peace and unity among the Muslims?
This question is based on the assumption that when the Mahdi appears, he will immediately bring peace to the whole world, as if by a magic wand. This premise is not acceptable. It is not only irrational, it's against the entire history of religion. No prophet of God, however great he may be, can or would ever change the lot of the people against their wish. Because this is an unchangeable principle which is accepted by all the religions of the world with relation to their own histories. Those who didn't believe in Jesus Christ didn't force him in any manner of speaking of believing in them. Nor did God take any measures to make them see the truth while they did not want to. It is like you are appearing in the sun and shutting your eyes. If you have a freedom to keep the eyes closed, then you won't be able to see the sun and won't be able to benefit from it. So if you open your eyes and then you don't see, then it will be a proof of the non-existence of the sun, not otherwise. So if, in case of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallam, Abu Jahl and Utbah and Shaiba and others did not see him and did not recognize him, will this lady apply the same principle of proving the truth or falsehood of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? And again, if Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came for the reformation of the entire world, how many years have passed since? 1400 years plus. And yet, this lady must agree that even the lots of the Muslim has not changed. It's deteriorating. It's contained in the question itself. So what was the purpose of the coming of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? Would she consider him having failed? Or would he consider him false because he couldn't bring about that reformation for which he came, even among the Muslims? So that instead of rising to greater heights and glory spiritually, they are rapidly sinking into the abysmal depth of satanic behavior. So that means the lady doesn't understand the philosophy of religion and the philosophy of the advent of prophets and Mahdis and whatever name you may give them. The purpose of sending a messenger or a redeemer by God is to offer an opportunity to the people to accept and be benefited from that and have a fair chance of being redeemed. If they reject, then God never forcibly brings them to the area of truth, brings them to light, and they do not benefit from any prophet, not to mention Mahdi alone, from any prophet without their will. So the question is, has Hazrat Masih Maud al-Islam, if he is right, brought about a change among those who accepted him? Or has he failed to do that? That is the only valid criterion by which we could judge any reform in the world. Now, applying this question back in time to Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we know it was a fantastic revolution which took place in the character of the Arabs of the pre-Islamic era and the Arabs who had accepted him. Unbelievable changes took place. I mean, if I go into detail, it will not be possible for me even to finish or do justice to the subject within 2-3 hours. But let's just touch upon it and turn back to Jesus Christ. Did he not bring about a fascinating change in the character and the attitudes of the people of the house of Israel, that is the Jews? Those who had forgotten to forgive, they magically forgot to take revenge. Completely transformed people. But only those who accepted him, not others. So the only way you can judge the truth of Mahdi with reference to this question would be to compare the Ahmadiyya community as such with all other communities, religions, etc. in the world, and see if you see, and judge for yourself if you see any signs and recognize any signs of a reformed community who is treading the same path as earlier reformed communities used to tread. Now, as far as sacrifices for a good cause are concerned, Jesus Christ said a tree can be recognized by the fruit it bears. The words may be different, but this is the essence of what he said. So, what fruit did he produce? A long history of at least 300 years of continuous sacrifices, generation after generation. It was unthinkable in the Jewish society in which he appeared to reform them. So that was the proof of the truth of Jesus Christ. What so brought about such metamorphosis as if in the conduct and behavior of the people who believed in him? That is a sign of a godly man among them. And the same has been the case of Ahmadiyya community. If you look back at the 100 years or some more of its history, what is happening in Pakistan nowadays? Hundreds of thousands of people are suffering at the hands of the opponents of Ahmadiyya in so many ways. They are prosecuted and persecuted alike for the crime of saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. The high courts, the Supreme Courts have issued their verdicts against such Ahmadis who just said there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet and his servant, and passed the judgment that if we permit them to do that, then if any Tom, Dick and Harry in the street murders them, he would be within his rights to do so. The kalima has become a crime, and a crime of such serious nature that the courts see that crime to be so serious that you don't have to sue the person in the courts. You can take the arms in your own hands, the murderous weapon in your hand, and murder them, and you'll be justified. When did it happen before? Scan the history of religions. Never in any other religion. But in Islam it did happen. At the time of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And during his time, his followers were persecuted and punished and killed and murdered and dragged in the streets of Mecca just for committing the crime of declaring La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. We bear witness that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. So that history is revived through the sacrifices of Ahmadiyya. And still they don't see any change having been brought about by Mahdi. What is their lot, what they are doing? Look at the crime list of Pakistan, which is rampant in Pakistan nowadays, and compare the Ahmadiyya attitude. Although we are not fully satisfied, it's not yet ideal. But we're always striving to reach the ideal, and genuinely so, taking all measures to do so. And what we have achieved in comparison to the rest of the society is unbelievably different. So if this lady opens her eyes and judges and makes comparisons, realistically, comparisons of realities against other realities, then she would understand the answer to her own question. Thank you. You said there's a long list and now you're looking elsewhere for other questions.
I thought if there's somebody present who would like to present, otherwise...
No, they would come. They don't need your attention, your invitation, do they? We have already told them anybody who would like to ask a question is most welcome. You go on leading your list. If somebody arrives, I'll let you know where to stop and when to stop, right?
Right. The next question is that how do you see your role and the role of the Ahmadiyya movement? Why there is so much bickering in the Muslim Ummah? And how are you trying to resolve the differences between your discipline and the Sunni and the Shiites and the Wahabis?
Is it one question? Let's take it up in parts. If the soul doesn't have parts, the questions have. Okay?
Right. So I presume then the first question would be that how do you see your role and the role of the Ahmadiyya movement?
And that's again in two parts. Well, in fact, it's the same question because I and Ahmadiyya movement are not separable. We are one and the same thing. I, in the capacity of the Khalifa, have no other identity but that of Ahmadiyya movement. So our role here is exactly the role which is assigned to all reformers by God, to bring to light the problems, to analyze them, to make them easier to understand, and try to awaken people to the realities of life. Look here, this is what's happening to you at your own hands. You will reach the precipice of no return if you don't reform within a reasonable time. And this is what we're doing, trying to awaken the world consciousness to not only to the concept of religion as an ethereal concept, but to such hard realities as can be understood by all human beings alike, whether they believe in you or not. Now, it doesn't take for anyone to understand that to murder is bad, to steal is bad, to be drug addict is bad. Well, some don't agree, but most do. Now, the question is to wage a war against evils is the prime responsibility of those who belong to God genuinely and who come from God and who are commissioned by God to do so. And the entire purpose of Jamaat Ahmadiyya all over the world is exactly this. And to analyze the situation and to make them realize the real causes of problems and suffering of man, and to try to make them understand before it's too late, you better reform yourself and take some remedial measures. Whenever I visit different countries of the world, I speak on the same subject. Like I even here touched upon this basic issue that no peace can be established without justice. So in response to ex-President Bush's claim, or is he late?
Ex.
He's ex only, okay. So ex-President Bush's claim that, and also Reagan carried the same flag forward, that America was now about to bring about a revolution, a golden age, a new era for the world, new era of peace. And all Americans nowadays speak so highly and loudly of this. But where can be peace where there is no justice? This is what I have been bringing to the notice of the world politicians, and this is the main subject of my address wherever I visit. And in my series of lectures, which are now published as under the title of Gulf Crisis and the New World Order, I have thoroughly examined and analyzed these issues and drawn the conclusion that if the world wants really peace, real peace, then first of all it must believe in the principle of absolute justice, not relative justice. The problem with the current contemporary politics and politicians is that they only believe in relative terms of justice, not in absolute justice. If they believe in absolute justice, then the reaction of Europe and America towards Bosnia would be even more strong, more severe and stronger than their reaction against what happened in Kuwait. Because the principles involved were, if not equal, they were not equal but the same. They were not equal because injustice was committed far more gravely in case of Bosnia than in the case of Kuwait. And it continued to be committed for years upon years. And the West talked and talked and talked and did not react even 1,000th part as much as they acted and reacted in relation to what happened in Kuwait at the hands of Iraqis. The only difference between the situation from one angle is that in that case it was a Muslim country which attacked a small Muslim state. And the world opinion was aroused. and Americans declared that a new Hitler is in the offing. And to save the world, we must gather round the principle that we will not permit a bigger fish to eat a smaller fish. If we did that, then there will be no peace left in the world. If you return to those statements, which are still available in the records of your newspapers, you'll see with what majesty and grandeur the American leadership announced this fact. It is for the sake of safeguarding human values, the principles of justice, principle of peace, that we are mustering the world forces against one Hitler in the offing, which will destroy the peace of the whole world. A Muslim country ventured upon an exercise in relation to a small neighborly countries. That was the reaction. A non-Muslim country, fully aided by the erstwhile communist regime, is attacking a small Muslim state. And the crimes committed against the people of Bosnia are no less than 100 times more grave and numerous than the crimes or the so-called crimes committed against the Kuwaiti people. So what is the difference? The principle as it evolves seems to be that if a non-Muslim punishes a Muslim, then there should be no reaction in the world. But if a Muslim punishes a Muslim, then you must react very strongly against it. Is there any logic in that? So that is what I have been trying to do in my writings, in my addresses, during my visits, in my question answers. I draw the attention of the world that you are living a lie, you are following a policy of absolute hypocrisy, unless you are true to yourself and strict and severely and adhere to principles. There can be no peace in the world. In relative terms, if a British politician speaks of something which may be in accordance with the absolute principle of justice, favorable to another nation, as against the interest of the British, he would dare not speak on that subject, or he will be removed from the politics. So in the ultimate analysis, what we find is that it's not the fault of some politicians. It is the fault of the thinking of the people as such. The whole world has become selfish. The entire world is living a lie, has become hypocritical. So all these loud claims of justice, peace, etc. are just expressions and no more. And we need substance, we need realities to change the world. So this is what we are doing, among so many other things. Right?
Yeah.
Next question, please. The next part of the question.
Why is there so much bickering in the Muslim Ummah? How are you trying to resolve the differences between your discipline and the Sunni, Shiite and Wahabis?
You see, there is no question of our even trying to do that, because they reject us, they hate us, they have thrown us out of the pale of Islam. They can't tolerate our declaring La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Would they accept us as judges and arbiters in resolving their differences? Well, this is a very unrealistic question. I have been meeting some of their leadership. I have been meeting some highly placed and highly placed, not officials only, but belong to the very highest rung of political life in Muslim countries. And in private talks, they all agreed with me that what you say is right, this should be the approach. But how can it be achieved? This is a different question. All Muslim leadership in their own countries are totally helpless because they themselves are responsible for creating an atmosphere of duality within their own countries. When they speak to the West, they make false, loud, meaningless claims that as if they were adversaries, and we will not tolerate this and we will not tolerate that and do this for the world of Islam, and you are not behaving justly to this Muslim country and that Muslim country. They gather, make resolutions, but to what effect? Nothing. And when they meet them privately, they say, oh, this is a public talk, this is politics. We have to say things and don't mind our censure because it is essential for our survival. But at the same time, their talk of this unrealistic and hallowed attitude towards the West. Hallowed in the sense that they give it an Islamic name, not in the sense of hollow. They try to make it appear as a divine attitude. For the sake of Islam, we are not going to tolerate any nonsense from your side. So they hallow their claims and they make false claims and they don't mean them, either in relation to its so-called Islamic nature or in relation to their own, the goodness of their own state and their own country. So is the case of the ulama underneath. They go on taking up or calling their bluff, so to say, and say, all right, if you stand for Islam, then why don't you enforce Islam through legal means? And if you don't do it, then we launch movements against you. So this duality on the part of the Muslim leadership in different Muslim countries has created in the split, in the plane of up and down, in the side, horizontal plane, dividing the upper class of Muslim society and the lower ordinary class of the Muslim society in every country. There's dissatisfaction, bickering. Against what? Against the falsehood, against the duality, against the hypocrisy. And these ulama themselves are in fact sowing the seeds of hypocrisy. So where is peace? Where is security from these false claimants of their welfare? What the ulama do is, when a person indulges in violation of Islamic principles of life, in daily life, they don't care. People lie, people deceive, people cheat, people abduct, people tell lies in the courts, and the ulama take it calmly and they have good night's sleeps. So if they loved Islam and what their war against their lords, which they think are un-Islamic, was for the sake of Islam, then they should realize that Islam is a way of life which should be practiced, and no law can stand between the practice of Islam in ordinary affairs of being good to other human beings. That is an area which is free for everyone to act upon. For instance, take the case of Egypt, take the case of Algeria. There the split is becoming more pronounced and entering dangerous zones nowadays. Which law of the Algerian government prevents Muslims there from saying their namaz, gathering in the mosques, being just in the distribution of their legacies, telling the truth when they appear in the courts, not to rob, not to steal, not to tell lies? Which is the law in Algeria which compels them to lead an un-Islamic life? No such law exists. So why don't they do it then? The holy war should be against this duplicity. But they don't care about Islam. They only want to achieve their purpose of getting to the head of the state and achieving political power. this problem is a natural result of what happened, and a natural outcome, in fact, which I expected right from that moment. What happened in the name of Islam in Iran. They saw a clergy which previously had no role to play in political affairs come to the top of the political life and become absolute masters in politics in the name of Islam. So this has aroused in them that ambition to repeat the same everywhere. This is what is happening in Pakistan nowadays, this is what's happening in Egypt and other places. So the problem is that we as a whole, as a human being, are not honest to our own self and our own causes. So what can be done about it then? This is the big thing about, in answer to that question. Now I think there are some guests who have come to ask questions.
Can I say thank you for answering my questions?
They were your
Thank
questions?
you so much, yes.
Thank you for asking these questions. They gave me an opportunity
You see,
to explain things to you.
I don't know anything about Ahmadi, you see, so that's why I came. And that is why I asked the questions.
Thank you so much.
And the thing is this, when I talk about the Mahdi, I thought it meant Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, you see. That is why, but not the Prophet has,
Of course, that I understood and answered in that, exactly in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much.
Please. Now, next question. Now, this was an observation. Any other question, please?
Hello. You believe that the promised Messiah has already come.
Yes.
But the world's been around for a very long time and hopefully will exist a long time into the future. Are you ruling out the possibility of the coming of another prophet or Messiah?
Ruling out any possibility of what?
Of another prophet coming, or?
How can we rule out a possibility? That's such a possibility. It's for Allah, for God, to take decisions in that area. No human can take such a decision.
But you don't expect it? Or
No, I'll come to that.
Yes.
Why? I'll explain that. The fact is, as far as the coming of Hazrat Masih Maud as the promised Messiah is concerned, and the world at large being unaware of his claims and having not accepted him is concerned, that is exactly what you should have expected if he was true.
Yes.
Because he claimed that he has come in the image of Jesus Christ, the first Messiah. And if you go back to the history of Jesus Christ of the first century and compare the history of Ahmadiyya to that first century of Christianity, then you are bound to compare the history of Ahmadiyya as with advantage, not with disadvantage. Because I have gone into the subject with reference to the Christian history, and I found that the Christianity by that time, at the end of the first century, had hardly reached 27 countries. It may be 28, 1, 2 plus minus, but Ahmadiyya has already reached 140 countries of the world. And the changes brought about and the recognition brought about by Ahmadiyya is definitely not less than the recognition of Christianity in that first phase of Christian history. So a slow progress was, of course, decreed and designed. But can you claim that Ahmadiyya is true just because of its slow pace of progress? Certainly not. The other signs must accompany and go hand in hand with this progress. And those signs are that 100 years of persecution of Christians did not succeed in subduing them, in forcing them to renegade, in forcing them to renounce Jesus and Christianity. In fact, what happened was that more of a persecution and the more resolute that the Christians seem to emerge. Is that happening to Ahmadiyyat or not? If it is happening, and if also the persecution fails to destroy Ahmadiyyat, rather they come out larger and bigger through the middle of persecution, then the similarity is a genuine similarity and logical similarity. Otherwise, just a slow rate of progress doesn't mean anything. So in that respect, I draw your attention, kind attention to the fact that study the perseverance of Ahmadiyyat for the cause, for the good cause. And also the nature of Ahmadi character. Are they not more benign, humane, and philanthropist in their attitude to the rest of the world than all other Muslim sects? If the facts prove this fact, then this is the difference between Judaism and Christianity. We believe that Jesus Christ didn't bring in a new faith. So you must judge us according to our belief and our understanding of history. And we will find us true in that. We believe that Jesus Christ revolutionized the attitudes, did not change the Old Testament. Because he came that he had not come to change a jot of what was written in the books, but he had come to perfect the teaching, to complete it. So what he did was, he revolutionized the attitude of a hard-hearted people and transformed them into people who loved Allah's creature and sacrificed in so many ways for the sake of the poor, of the unadvantaged, of the miserable, suffering humanity. And this is exactly what we are doing. So, general picture should be similar. That is the main principle which we claim, and I think it's convincing enough.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you a question. Why you don't call Hazrat Mirza Sahib only reformer, but Ummati Nabi as well, when it confuses and create problem and confusion about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the last prophet?
Yes, I believe that this question is founded on lack of proper knowledge of what Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu himself claimed, and lack of understanding of the verse Khatam al-Nabiyyin.
Okay.
If you truly understand the meaning of the verse Khatam al-Nabiyyin, which is supported by other verses of the Holy Quran, only then you can understand the answer to this question.
So would you please explain?
This is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm laying the foundation for the answer, which you should expect would naturally be a bit longer than a small answer of yes and no, right?
Okay.
The fact is that the word Khatam really means the most perfect, highest in status, highest in rank, something which cannot find its equal not only in the time when the claim is made, but even ever after in the future. Also, it has no relationship only to the present and the future, it has also relationship to the past. So when Allah declares somebody to be Khatam, it means supreme in all virtues and status and position and nearness to God in relation to all the prophets of God, whether they were in the past or even if they come in future. So the word Khatam is not a declaration which is fixed in a time. It has the effect on the past, equal effect on the past as well as on the future. So if Khatam is translated to mean no prophet can appear, then no prophet should have appeared in the past as well.
That's true.
Because the quality of excellence knows no time. It is timeless and extends from the past to the future equally. Literally it means khatam, this ring which I am wearing, signet ring. And it is a signet ring which in fact is called khatam in Arabic. And what is the quality of a signet ring? It imprints itself upon others. So in that sense we believe that the word khatam as applied to Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam means that if you find the same features as you find in Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in all the claimants to prophethood, then they must be true prophets. If you find contrary characters to what the print of khatam of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam creates as a print, then that person must be false. So it would mean in another sense that all prophets should be judged according to the character and the person of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And that statement also is timeless. Whether in the past or in the future, it is equally applicable. Then the word khatam means also a father-like figure. And it is exactly in this context that the verse Khatam an-Nabiyyin speaks of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam being khatam. So I'll recite that verse and then you'll understand that it's not something which I'm making up myself. This is exactly what is written in the Quran, and the context in which it should be understood is going to be related to you now when I recite the verse, after I recite the verse. It says, Ma kana Muhammadun aba ahadim mir rijalikum walakir Rasulallahi wa khataman nabiyyin. Muhammad is not a father to a man like you, to men like you. Why is it said? Because the enemies of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to jeer him and mock him and sort of ridicule him for the reason that he was not the son of a male issue. He was not the father of a male issue. This was the practice of the Meccans. They said, he claims to be a prophet and he is not even blessed by a son.
He was though.
But he died early.
Yes.
Of course. But the Meccans said and the Quran recorded, this is what it meant, of course. Hazrat Ibrahim died in early infancy, only at the age of 4 and 4.5 years. We are not talking of that. God is talking of that. Nor the opponents of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam took that to be a sign of his being father. Father of men, Rijal, and the word Rijal does not apply to children.
No, yes, mard. Yes.
Aba ahadim mir rijalikum. No issue of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has grown up into manhood.
Yes.
That was the objection. So the answer to that is, yes, it's true. But he is not only a Rasul, a messenger of Allah, but Khataman Nabiyyin. Now, if you maintain that view, which is held by most of the majority of ulama, that Khatam means the last of the prophets after which no prophet can ever be born, and even in his own ummah, a prophet who follows him cannot appear, then what would be the meaning of this verse in this context? The meaning would be that you only know half the defect of this man. You say he is not the father of a man, but we tell you he will not father a prophet either, ever after. So no prophet will be born in his ummah either. So he is issueless in that sense, not only physically but spiritually. Now this is an insult to Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallam, and this meaning cannot be entertained by any lover of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallam if he goes into the depth of this. What we say as Ahmadis, what we understand of this is that the Holy Quran answers to them, look here, if he is not a father of men like you, it's no issue of shame. Your father should be ashamed to have given birth to Abu Jahl and Tutba and Shaiba. These were the people who used to taunt Ahmad at this. So the verse should be understood as a most wonderful, effective response to their jeering. It would mean, yes, it's honorable. It's a very honorable position that Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah was not given sons like you people are, but he is the father of all prophets. If Khatam is understood to mean the father of all prophets, then again this statement is timeless. The prophet that were, the prophet that could be, unless he is the father of those prophets are not true, genuine prophets at all. So practically it is the same thing which I have already said earlier. But how can you interpret the word Khatam as father?
So do you mean...
I'll come to that.
Okay.
You know, I have been answering these questions for so long that I know what is to come.
Okay.
So when I'm finished,
Okay, it's all right.
then if whatever is left, then you please point out to me. I'm raising a question myself, that if it is understood to mean that Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah is a father of all prophets, then the question would arise, how can you relate the concept or the form or purpose of a signet ring with that of a father? The answer is very simple and understandable. A child can be recognized by the characters he bears, and a father can be recognized also by the characters the child bears. So a signet ring imprints its character upon whatever it touches. So similarly, all fathers give their own not transform, but give or provide their character, or transfer was the word, transfer their character onto their progeny. That is why, even nowadays this is a very hotly debated legal issue, whether by the study of the genes one should legally accept the claim of somebody to be the son of somebody or not. This imprint is on every human cell. So Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah is claimed to be a signet ring of prophets, which means if you find his imprint, then you will have to admit that he is the father, because he has larger character and the prophets may share only a portion thereof. Now this view is the view of Ahmadiyya Jamaat in understanding of the word Khatam an-Nabiyyin. Before discussing it in relation to another verse of the Quran, which exactly agrees with this claim, I come to another very important question of the usage by Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself of the same phrase Khatam. The issue, debatable issue, for the sake of those who don't understand this Islamic terminology, is the meaning of the word Khatam. Khatama may mean finished, and the word Khatam may mean the one who finishes. And it also means the signet ring, who instead of finishing produces its images and is capable of producing its images as many as it pleases. So this is the debate about when he was declared as Khatam, did God mean that he has finished the institution of prophethood forever and no prophet would ever come after him? Or does it mean that only those prophets would come who are like sons to him, who are born within his ummah and are ummati and subordinate. This is the debate, Now, to satisfy your curiosity, let me quote the usage of the same word khatam by Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah himself in application to a human being. Once speaking of Hazrat Ali, or addressing him directly, he said, Ya Ali, ana khatam al-anbiya wa anta khatam al-awliya or khatam al-asfiya. Both these words are reported. Which means, Ali, as I am the khatam of all the prophets, so you are the khatam of all the saintly people. Correct?
Yes, that's right.
Now, what does it mean? In what sense Hazrat Ali was the khatam of all the saintly people? Does it mean that Muhammad Rasulullah informed his ummah that, like me, being khatam of prophets, Ali is the khatam of all the good, pious people? Meaning that no prophet will be born after me in Islam, and no saint, no pious man will be born after Hazrat Ali. Can you accept this meaning? The yardstick is the same, imagine. And you, in the same breath.
But it has been said as well that there will be a reformer in each century.
I'll come to that later. This is a different question.
So,
what is the status of that reformer? This is what we are discussing.
yeah.
Reformers, of course, would come. But he never referred to any other reformer himself as a prophet. But when he prophesied about the coming of Messiah, in the book Al-Muslim, Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah is reported to have spoken of Messiah being prophet of God, prophet of God, prophet of God, prophet of God 4 times in the same hadith. And the Muslim, is one of the most authentic books of tradition. After Bukhari, this is the second in authenticity, but bracketed with the 6 authentic books of hadith. So in Muslim, Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah speaks of the Messiah to come, and 4 times he mentions him as Nabiullah, 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 Nabiullah. So in answer to your question, why do we create this confusion by insisting that a reformer is some sort of Nabiullah? My answer would be to address this question to Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If it is a confusion, it is he who raised this confusion. But he didn't raise any confusion. In fact, he clarified issues. He enlightened us. What he meant was that within my ummah, a reformer would be born who would be a prophet of God, but without a Sharia, without a law. And this is exactly the belief of all the Muslims together, that Messiah did not bring a new law. You know that.
Yes,
right?
I do.
So why he chose the word Messiah to indicate the future reformer of the latter days was with this purpose, that the one who would be entitled Messiah by God, whose advent would be in the latter days, if he's true Messiah, he's bound to be a prophet of God as well. And he knew better than any other person in the world the meaning of the word Khatam. So in this respect, also remember another tradition where he speaks, there will be no prophet after him, no prophet after him. Not one of these, so many. But what about this Messiah? When he himself calls him a prophet, he himself has resolved the issue by saying in another tradition that when I say there is no prophet after me, he said, there will be no prophet after me between my time and the time of Messiah. So he doesn't include him in the negative statement of no prophet. He said there will be no prophet between me and the Messiah. So there is no contradiction in Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's statements. But let me return to that verse which I promised you would throw ample life on the true meaning of the word Khatam in the Quran. That verse is from Surah An-Nisa, the ladies. This is the most appropriate verse to be quoted here in an August Assembly of Ladies. In Surah An-Nisa, the Holy Quran says, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. Whoever obeys Allah and Ar-Rasul, this Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what would happen to such people? What do you expect? Will they be punished or rewarded? Tell me honestly.
Sorry, say
when I make this statement, whoever obeys Allah and this Prophet Muhammad, what should to come after this? Such a people would be punished or such a people would be rewarded?
Rewarding.
Of course, this is what the Holy Quran says. This verse goes on building the same theme by adding, مَنْ يُطَعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. Whoever obeys Allah and this Rasul, Muhammad Rasulullah, from now on, these will be the people who would be rewarded by Allah. أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. What is the meaning of reward? Minan Nabiyina. These perfect, obedient people, servants of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah within his Shariat, could be prophets. Was Siddiqeen. The second reward after prophethood is Siddiq. Was Siddiqeena, was Shuhadai, and the martyrs. Was Salihina, and the ordinary righteous people of Islam. So the Holy Quran, when it speaks of the rewards, possible rewards, of perfect obedience to Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah and God, it includes the reward of prophethood in this. But only on the condition that he is a follower prophet, obedient to him, not an independent prophet. So that is why whenever we claim that Hazrat Mirza Sahib was pronounced prophet of God, not that we made him, when he was pronounced prophet of God by Allah, he was pronounced as Ummati Nabi, under Mayyuta, not outside. So to prove this point further, I draw your attention to the fact that Islam, Ahmadiyya way of life, is 100% within the domain of the Quranic teaching. The way we say prayer, the way we keep fast, the way we conduct our lives are entirely within the Sharia of Islam, and there is not a single advice or admonition or suggestion by Hazrat Masih Maud which lies outside the teachings of Islam. He was so cautious in these matters and so conscious of his role as the perfect obedient servant of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah that once it was suggested to him that he should prohibit the smoking. And Sahaba knew that he didn't like, he was averse to this. So one of them said, "Yeah, why don't you prohibit smoking?" And he said, "Who am I to prohibit smoking? When it's not prohibited in the Quran or by Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah. So I have not come to add to the Sharia. I have come to rehabilitate those injunctions and understandings of Sharia which the people of the latter days had forgotten." So he didn't come to add, but to rehabilitate the true Sharia of Islam and for no more. So our address to him as Prophet, first of all, is in perfect agreement with the injunction of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah himself. Imagine yourself, if he is not the Messiah, somebody else would come the other day, tomorrow, day after, or after 1,000 years. If he claims that he is the Messiah, but he is not a prophet of God, how would the ulama of that time treat him? They would certainly, if they have any common sense, they would say, "You are a liar, Because if you are a Messiah, according to the prophecy of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah, the Messiah has to be a prophet. So when you say you are not a prophet, you are not that Messiah of which Rasulullah was speaking. And they will be within their rights to reject him on that count. And if he said he was a prophet of God, they would reject him. They said, Khataman Nabiyyin, you don't read the Quran? However could a prophet, a Messiah come in the Ummah if this is the attitude of the people? Instead of trying to understand the import of the injunctions, they just make excuses to reject, and no prophet can ever come. No Messiah can ever come in this Ummah. Now, if you want to ask a question, please.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Just one more question have come in my mind when you were talking. That in a way, I think that Sunni Muslim contradict this themselves.
That's right.
As if they believe that Jesus is alive on the sky and he will come before the justice day. So even a new or old prophet is coming back.
That's right, yes.
So
Absolutely.
they are not believing then on the...
Exactly. You have supported me. It's not a question, it's a further support of what I maintain.
Okay.
And this is something which
So that's what
I
I
have been saying, in response to many other questions.
No, but they strongly disbelieve
You
this.
see that their position is absolutely paradoxical.
Okay,
Very
thank
unfortunate for them.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Now, a chit arrived some time ago reminding me that the time for Maghrib prayer is slipping out of hand.
Huzur, one lady has requested
Oh, but all right,
that
to
she,
compensate for their waiting for so long, I'll say Isha prayer together with Maghrib. And that is what pleases many an old man who can't, please.
Huzur, one lady has requested that she would like to join the community and be initiated.
Most welcome. Why not? Would you like to be initiated into Ahmadiyya at my hand like we do Bai'at?
Ji Huzur.
Now.
Ji Huzur.
So, in Islam, what we do is when we take Bai'at or give oath of allegiance to somebody, we hold hands if they are men. Out of respect for ladies and respect for their chastity, Islam does not promote free physical contact between men and women unless they belong to close family relationship. So that is why in case of women, what we do is, sometimes I ask one of my daughters to come and hold my hand, and the new one who wants to be initiated, she holds the hand of my daughter, so a physical contact is established. So I would request Tuba to come forward. And the lady also to come here. We'll sit here. And you give me your hand and hold the hand of the lady who wants to be initiated. Okay?